remiss if I didn't mention that two of my most senior advisors are English born and bred. By the way, I only have two advisors. While one is from London, the other is from Manchester, and I'm starting to learn the intense football rivalries between the two. I would also like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Israeli government and the Israeli people to thank you, Colonel Richard Kemp, for your unwavering support for Israel, especially during these last difficult few years. While I know Richard has a CDE, I would like to bestow on him the highest honor the Jewish people can confer, and that is of a mensch. According to Webster's dictionary, a mensch can be translated as meaning a person of integrity and honor. You, Richard, certainly has no shortage of either. And just like Lord Wingate before you, you also qualify as becoming Chief of Staff of the IDF, if you don't mind their relocation. While many around the world have unfairly criticized Israel after our necessary defensive measures, Colonel Kemp has gone to every forum imaginable, including to the United Nations Human Rights Council, to defend Israel's actions as a man of impeccable military bravery, reputation, and knowledge. While many armchair speculators regularly accuse the Israeli Defense Forces of war crimes and disproportion, Colonel Richard Kemp has described and proved Israeli actions to safeguard civilian lives during conflict were incomparable in the annals of history. Richard, thank you again for being a voice of morality and truth in an age where these two values are becoming less fashionable. If one traces its origins to the Durban Declaration of 2001, the assault on Israel's legitimacy has been ongoing for 10 years. At the Foreign Ministry, we are following these developments very carefully and have a department specifically built to monitor the so-called BDS, boycotts, divestments, and sanctions movement, and to make recommendations to defeat it. By the way, incidentally, the person who heads this division is also of a Commonwealth origin. He is from Australia. Despite the noise it makes, in real terms, the assault on Israel to isolate and delegitimize the Jewish state has been a resounding failure. The number of embassies we are opening around the world is growing. Bilateral trade agreements are increasing. Numbers of visitors to Israel are breaking records, and Israel is becoming more involved in the global agenda than ever before. If the aim of our enemies is to isolate Israel, our strategic response is to further integrate into the international system, as we've shown by our recent accession to the OECD and our admittance to CERN, the European Organization of Nuclear Research. If the aim of our enemies is to delegitimize Israel, our strategic response is greater participation in the global agenda. Next week, Israel is holding a significant international conference on water treatment and management, food security, and combating desertification, where Israeli technology is feted and celebrated by many. Attendees include heads of state, government officials, and the leading international companies in these fields. In addition, for the first time in many years, Israel is passing United Nations resolutions relevant to the developing global agenda. Israel's place and standing in the international community has not been shaken by the BDS movement. However, the one area where this vicious, and I would also say anti-Semitic movement is having an effect is on the truth. The truth about Israel's history, its rights, and its legitimacy in public discourse. The rights of the people of Israel, the Jewish people in this land, are ancient, indisputable, and unbreakable. However, there was one moment in history where the nations of the world stood as one and declared this point in a resounding fashion. The international community, with Arab representation, adopted the concept of returning the Jewish people to sovereignty in their ancestral homeland. This decision was declared in San Remo in 1920 and confirmed by the League of Nations in 1922. These resolutions both used a central tenet, the Balfour Declaration, signed November 2nd, 1917. This famous, singular document provided official international recognition of a dream and hope our people held for 2,000 years. The Balfour Declaration can be referred to as the birth certificate of the Jewish spring. The spring of nations in Europe during the 19th century took decades and millions of lives before that continent settled into democracy. The Arab version may take even longer. However, the Jewish spring, set in motion by Lord Arthur James Balfour's signature, was even more remarkable. Thousands of Jews from all four corners of the globe made the long journey home. The vast majority, with no experience of democracy, oppressed and with few freedoms, to create an enlightened society, the likes of which this region has never known. Many current pundits and commentators stress the need for patience towards a democratic outcome in the Middle East after the recent revolutions. Some even claim that liberal democracy is a foreign, an alien concept and impossible to implement in the lands comprising the Middle East. The Jewish people, against all odds, have shown this is false, demeaning, and misleading. The Jewish people returning after 2 millennia of oppression from well over 100 different countries, speaking dozens of different languages, each with its own traditions and culture, to create the melting pot that is the state of Israel today. Our democracy has never wavered and has stood the test of time, regardless of its inexperienced foundations. This is what Balfour's pen set in motion, and this is what we commemorate tonight. However, there are those who seek to rewrite history and forsake the truth. Many have argued that the term used in the Declaration, Jewish national home, fell short of Zionist aspirations and suggest that the Declaration never meant to encourage the creation of a state. This interpretation fails because the major players in the drafting of the agreement thought otherwise. Of course, it would have been diplomatically impossible for the British government to promise a state at that time, primarily because the territory was not given in its hands. The term national home was used as a first step on the path to statehood. Lord George, who was Prime Minister at the time of the Declaration, laid the onus for the transforming of a national home to a state on the Jews themselves. He wrote in his memoirs, and I quote, "It was contemplated that when the time arrived for according representative institutions to Palestine, if the Jews had meanwhile responded to the opportunity afforded them by the idea of a national home and had become a definite majority of the inhabitants, then Palestine would thus become a Jewish commonwealth." End of quote. General Smuts, a member of the Imperial War Cabinet, when the Declaration was published, said in 1919 that he could see, and I quote, "in generations to come, a great Jewish state rising there once more." Boy, he was a prophet. Influential figures like Lord Robert Cecil in 1917, Sir Herbert Samuel in 1919, and Winston Churchill in 1920 all spoke about the resulting Jewish state. The intention of the Balfour Declaration is abundantly clear, and it was abundantly clear when the League of Nations mandate for Palestine was given to the British on the basis of the Declaration, which was further carried over into the United Nations Charter in Article 80. Few national movements in history have such international legitimacy in their arsenal. Sadly, much of this is little known, and that is what the enemies of Israel rely on. If historically the enemies of Israel have unsuccessfully tried to defeat us, through war and conflict, economic boycotts, and terrorism, it is on the battlefield of ideas and narratives where our current battle lies. To win this war, we need true and dedicated people who are not only willing to stand with Israel, but who also know the facts and the truth. We live in an age where the impactful headline and tapered image tell us all we care to know. Few wish to read books and learn history which will provide the context necessary to explain Israel's case. We need to be more dynamic and contemporary in our advocacy. I recently released 2 short YouTube videos which attempt to explain the truth about our rights to this territory and the peace process and why the peace process languishes, which is because of constant and consistent Palestinian rejectionism. The feedback has been so overwhelmingly positive that we are currently in the process of making a 3rd video in this series, hopefully followed by a 4th. We need to reach out and create bridges to combat this ongoing assault and provide a true reflection of our challenges here in Israel. I know that this is one of the express purposes of IBCA, and I wish you many more years of success in this end and in all of your endeavors. Thank you very much.